Hello, we're going to be exploring the cabinet object. This is an object that I put together. It can be a little cranky sometimes, so don't be concerned about that. But in general, it works really well, and I think that you're going to find that you can very quickly lay out an entire series of cabinets with a little bit of practice. Let's go ahead and start by taking a look at where this object is. So this object should go on the house cabinets layer in general. The actual object that you're going to use is under the BIM server library, Masterworks cabinet MW version 2. And this will give you access to all of these parameters. And let me just quickly go through. You're going to generally, you have two different choices here. You can do just a front, or you can do an entire cabinet box. So sometimes you need just a front to use as a panel or a filler. You're going to be using the different types of cabinets. So we have, let me spin this around. We have a face frame cabinet. You can see the face frame. It's called Crystal Inset, Crystal Half Overlay, Full Overlay, and frameless. Generally, you're going to use either the frameless or the crystal inset. We'll use the crystal inset for this example. Now, the number of bays is given here, and this is an area where you're going to see this a lot. So just click through it. And what happened was the cabinet box dimensions don't work anymore when you add the third bay. So you just have to come through here and adjust these. So we have an overall cabinet width of 3 feet. That's from here to here. The first bank is 2 feet. The second bay, oh, I'm sorry, it's 4 feet wide. It's the width here. This is the height. 4 feet, 2 feet, and 2 feet, and then 0. And that's the reason it's failing. So if we reduce the first 2 bays, so now we have a 1 foot bay, a 1 foot bay, and then what the object does is it just leaves the balance for the final bay. If you want these to be equal, you have to put in the values yourself. There is not an option currently to just say make all equal, although that would be a good thing to do. So it's going to continue to adjust the final bank, and with a few minutes of tinkering, you should be able to get these values to work. So once you set that up, and I'll go through that in a minute a little bit more, once you set this up, you're going to see that it gives you a nice plan view, and it's just a matter of copying these and then going in and adjusting as necessary. So notice this right-hand bank is always the one that's going to be adjusted. I'll go back into the cabinet. It's struggling because I made it too narrow. I will make the first bay 1 foot wide, and then we have 1.5 foot wide. So number of bays is your first priority. Generally click this protect settings. Number of bays, width, and then this is the style between the cabinet banks. So that is 2.5 inches in general. It's 1.25 on each side. So when the boxes come together, it adds to be a total of 2.5 inches. And we have different door styles. And so I'm going to go ahead and make this 2.5 and then 1-3. So I have 1 foot 3, 1 foot 3. This is a nice even cabinet. The door style, we have a Dover, which is also typically called a shaker. Dover is the name of the door that is purchased from Decorative Specialties, one of our primary sources. So I'm going to use the word Dover. Projection is 0. This is how far the door sticks out of the cabinet. And because the settings are protected, it won't let me adjust this. And if it's working right, it's not going to let me adjust that. So just ignore that. Like I said, there's a few little bugs in this, but things I need to just kind of work through and clean. So now the material, let's go ahead and close out of here. The material I want to use, I'm going to push 6 for surfaces. That's with the Masterworks shortcuts. And I want to create a new material called Cabinet 1. I'm going to duplicate interior 1. Then I want to put this to airspace so I don't have any hatching. We'll make this much brighter white, not a pure white, but a much brighter white. And no texture, although I can use any of these parameters. Typically, we'll just set this up. And once I have these, then all my cabinets can refer to the same surface. So notice I have control of the frame. I have control of the fronts. And I have control of the door panels, just in case there was a condition where they needed to be different. So that is all of the materials for the fronts. Now in here for box materials, there's another material here, and I'll put material plywood. Yeah, it's not. We'll do that. So this is actually where the box material comes in. For simplicity, I'll also just set it to be white. That's something that you can decide what makes sense for you. Okay, so now you have your materials. Then it's just a matter of getting the width, getting the number of bays, and then the overall cabinet height. So these are the same values that we're using up here. So 2'6" wide, 2 foot deep, 3 foot tall. The counter is 1.5 inches. The floor's 3/4 of an inch, and the gap to the wall is 1/4 of an inch. So let's look at these really quick. I'm going to create a working section. I'm going to select this and show it on the drawing. I'm just going to put it up. I recommend having working sections for all of these. If you have a grid that's on, I like to turn that off. It's right here, ortho grid, construction grid. So that's off. So now you can see these cabinets, and this is a nice way to see how things are working. So here we have the box dimensions for all the materials. The side panel, the front panel, every material thickness is here. So these are the actual materials, and these are the way the pieces are put together. So generally these are set up and you don't need to touch them, but if you wanted to change the left style dimension, you can see it made that 2 inches. I'll make it 4 inches. And so now I have a 4-inch style here. So that is where you are going to adjust, if you need to, the individual material dimensions unique to this cabinet and or the offsets. For getting started, just leave these as the default. The actual materials are how thick everything is. So how thick the shelves are, how thick the face frame is, that sort of thing. That's going to be adjusted here. Then adjusting how the fronts work with each bay. So bay 1, I want to put a 5-piece drawer there. You can see this became a smaller frame around the panel because that's the way the 5-piece drawer is set up. The next one is a door. I set this to be 6 inches, and then the balance is left to here. If I add a drawer here, another 5-piece drawer, and then I add a third one, it's going to be cranky. Don't worry about it. Just hit stop. And then make the next one none. Now I have 3 drawers, but you can see that this dimension went funky. That's again because it's trying to calculate. So once you reset that to 6 inches, it'll do 6 inches, 6 inches, balance. And then we have, French doors. Let's see, 5-piece drawer. Let me go to this drawer. We have a French door that just puts the glass in instead. We have a pair of doors. If you want a pair of doors, a pair of French doors. If you want it to be an open bay, if you need it to be just a closed bay, and then again, none, we'll just take that out of the equation altogether. So I'll put this back as a door. I'll have to make this 6 inches. So whenever you add a bay, you're going to have to go and adjust that previous value. And then each bay is set up exactly the same way, so that it's pretty easy to just build, and go for it. Now let's look at some of these dimensions. So we said that the cabinet was 3 feet tall, but we told it the counter is 1.5 inches. So you'll notice that this is 2'10.5" because if we add a slab to the top, and generally we use a slab to represent the countertop. So I'm going to put these now up against the wall. Slab can go up against the wall. And depending on what overhang you want. So typically I like to use 1.25 inches for, check that it worked. Yep, 1.25 inches. 1.25 inches off this frame. And I want this counter to be 1.5 inches and the height of it to be 3.75 inches because I want to take into account the finished floor, which is often 3/4 of an inch. I want to make that referencing the top. It's to be 6. There you go. I'll go back to our working section and I have a counter here. Now this is the 0.75, and that's because this cabinet was set it into the floor, but it really shouldn't be. It should be right on the rough floor. The toe kick is generally 4 inches, but it's showing 4.75 because when we put in the finished floor, I'll put in a finished floor here. Right up to the cabinet, choose my layer. This is going to go under finished floors so we can show it. Around, not going to whole floor, I'll just quickly patch that in. Now when I look at my section, turn on the finished floor layer. Now my cabinet is 3 feet from finished floor. So we told the toe kick it was 3/4 of an inch taller than it needed to be to accommodate for that finished floor. So we can turn the top panel on and off. We can include a toe kick or not include a toe kick. Here are the toe kick dimensions. So the height is 4, but remember we told it the overall box dimensions. We told it that the floor thickness is 3/4, so it's automatically making the toe kick taller. We told it countertop thickness. We told it's 3 feet with the countertop, and the gap to the floor is in plan. You'll see that the hot spot ends up being 1/4 inch back from the cabinet and lined up the edge of the face frame. The last feature I want to show you here is choosing door styles. So you have just a couple of choices and then a very flexible choice. The slab doors. Now, if you do slab and tell it to do a 5-piece, it will still override with a 5-piece. So you can just put this to slab, slab. All of these become slab. See here what it looks like. And the elevation, now you see these all slab. Now your other choice is a fun one. You hit 5 for your profile manager, cabinet door, edit. I've created one here. This is just a rough panel. Your frame goes here, your panel goes here, and you can just stop it wherever in this line needs to be level. This needs to show as a core. This needs to show as finish, and then it'll get the materials correct. I'll close that. And then if I tell the door style to be a profile, and I tell it cabinet door profile, which is the only one that really makes sense in this context, and I want all of the door fronts have to be door, DR, then you'll see that it gives us the ability to do these custom doors. So now if I go into 5, I come into the custom door, edit, and I want to, I'll just do a rounded corner here. Save that. And now you see I have a rounded edge, and very easy to make adjustments. Save again. Now I have a square edge. And this countertop, or the floor rather, needs to go all the way back 3 inches. So it's wrapping the actual frame. Now, there are obviously some more subtleties of setting up cabinets and so forth, but this is a general idea of how it works. The last thing I'm going to show you is I'm going to do an F9 and copy in place. I'm going to do an F12 and go up 4 feet, or I'll do 4.5 feet. Go back to my working section. This gives me a cabinet that's floating in the air. Then all I want to do is put a top panel on, turn the toe kick off, reduce the width to a foot, or 13 inches is something I like to do for an upper inset cabinet. And now I have to take off the drawer. So done. That's a door. A2. This is door. Done. Now I have an upper cabinet. I can copy this over with F9. Doesn't let me adjust on the fly, but I can take this width to 6. 2.5 rather. It's going to give me that same problem. Every time you make a major change, it gets a little cranky. And then we want to go to width, make this 1-3, and that one 1-3, and we have upper cabinets. Then you can use a profile or whatever you want for crown molding, light rail. The last thing I'll show you is just putting in a panel. So here we have this little recess here, which is only a 1/4 inch. We want this to be larger. So what we're going to do, we're going to go into the box dimensions. We're going to do the right style offset, and we're going to make this 0.75 inches. 0.75 inches. It's not letting me change that. Or what? It's this protect settings has to be checked. Now it's set this back, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this, and but I'm going to tell it that it's a front only, 1 bay. I'm going to move it and spin it around. Come here and go back 0.75 inches. Move this to the wall. And now I have an end panel that's set back from the face frame, which is the best way to do that. If it wasn't a face frame, I'd just cover up the whole side of the cabinet. So that's all I'm going to show you today. That should get you started. And I hope you have fun with this cabinet object. Happy modeling.